Step 1, remove the wheels, get the car in the air. Remove all of your lower fittings, which are ABS lines, brake line and lower shock mount. Remove the upper strut brace to gain access to the top shock bolts. Remove the wiring loom from the clips on the strut brace, which by squeezing either side of the plastic clips, this one slides out. And then remove the top bar. Removing the top strut brace will give you access to the 3 top mount or top strut bolts, which remove here, here and here to drop down the suspension. To remove the stock front suspension struts, remove the inner lower arm bolts to gain enough clearance to remove the lower forks. Quite tight those. With both inner front lower arm bolts removed, the anti-roll bar on both arms will drop down, giving you enough clearance. Simply remove the entire front strut assembly. As you can see with the HSD kit, similarities to the stock strut has the brake line mounting points and ABS line mounting points. To install the new HSD unit, just slot it into the stock position, making sure you've got both of the line brackets on the right side. Just be careful when slotting it in to move all of your bracketry out of the way so you don't clip anything. Secure from the top mount first. Using the stock top mount nuts. Refit the lower arms. Refit the lower suspension fork into the bottom arm. You may have to lift the bottom arm with a jack. Bit of assistance force going in. Secure with a nut on the other side. To make changes to your ride height, the HSD kit uses a separate spring preload and height adjustment. So you want to wind the damper body physically in or out of the bottom bracket to make adjustments, like so. Okay, just to demonstrate the minimum thread engagement of the damper into the bottom bracket, we've marked out a 25mm distance, which is a minimum we recommend to have engaged into the bottom bracket. The damper bodies on HSD coilovers are zinc coated to help with corrosion, but when assembling, always use supplied spray grease for the extra bit of help on our roads. Wipe away any excess that spills around the base of the coilover. So the large adjustments for preload and ride height are made with the C-spanners. For your final lock off, it's essential that you use a drift and a hammer to make sure everything's fully secure. Once you've fitted the strut in place, simply clip your ABS lines back into the bracket on the coilover. And secure your brake line back into the stock position using the nut from the stock strut. Refit the strut brace, just making sure not to clip any wiring, particularly on the near side on your way in. Clip all of your wiring back on and bolt down. So now onto the rear, loosen the outer toe arm bolt. We're now going to loosen the inner toe arm bolt to allow enough movement in this arm to remove the spring. Bear in mind that this is an eccentric bolt used for toe adjustment, so to mark where the bolt was originally so you can adjust it back to the same spec. Please bear in mind though, any changes in ride height you do make, you will need a full wheel alignment afterwards. When fully removing the toe arm suspension bolt, make sure that you have the lower arm supported as it's under tension from the spring. We're using a gearbox jack, but if you're working on the floor, you can just use a normal jack just to support this arm here. So with the inner bolt loosened and the outer bolt removed, slowly lower the jack to take the spring tension out of the arm. It may not move of its own accord, so if not, just a gentle tap with a hammer to help it on its way. So now remove all tension off the lower arm, which will release tension off the spring and allow you to remove it. So now we're going to remove the bolt from the stock rear shock. As you can see, on this side uses a captive nut, so no need to counter hold. Simply remove the bolt from this side. Now remove the two top mounting nuts. And once your two upper retaining nuts are loosened, pull the hub down slightly, push the damper back and remove. Today we're fitting the HSD DT kit, which uses an inboard spring setup similar to stock type suspension. If we were fitting the Monopro kit for the Z33, it uses a full coilover rear, which would use a traditional coilover spring around the damper setup. As we mentioned earlier, the stock damper has a captive nut. The HSD kit features a separate removable nut to use with the stock bolt when refitting the suspension. To install the rear damper, slide into place onto the two top studs and loosely install the two retaining nuts. And you should set the damper to full short. Install the lower fork using the stock bolt and nuts supplied with the kit. Remove the stock rubber spring seat and fit to the HSD spring. On setups with an inboard rear spring, ride height adjustments made using this spring adjuster. To show you how high the Z33 kit does go, we'll initially be installing it at maximum ride height. So now we're going to fit the rear spring. The height adjuster fits to the top of the spring. The bottom of the spring with the stock rubber mount fits into the toe arm. We're just going to swing the entire assembly up together into place. Use your jack to hold the bottom arm in place whilst bolting up to make things easier. Jack the lower arm into position. You may need to give the arm a slight tap with a rubber hammer just to bring it into position properly. Don't forget the inner bolt that we loosened to allow room to install the spring. When using stock suspension, you'd normally need to torque the bolt with the car either on a 4-post ramp or on the ground. With the HSDs and limited droop travel, you can do this by jacking the hub up to your approximate ride height and then torquing the inner bolt. Due to the design of the rear suspension, to adjust the damping without having to remove the damper, you can access it through this trim clip hole using a 2mm Allen key. So when we've got the car back on the ground with the HSDs at the highest setting, you can see the rear's roughly around sort of stock ride height. If we move to the front, you can see that it actually goes much higher than stock with the HSDs fitted at maximum ride height. So this is the car set at full low. It's that low, in fact, we've had to lower it onto some blocks of wood to get it off the ramp. Just bear in mind with the rear setup that it is on the standard wheels. And this is the front set to full low. As you can see, it's running quite low there.